to the Polar Homestead. We learn finance, permaculture and prepping, a modern view of the world. Don't forget, freedom is in your hands. Stay safe and vigilant, friends. And now your host, Ralph KK. Launch in 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Found some eyes that see me from the inside. Nothing left to hide, not even from myself. Oh, 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 oh. I wanna call you feel our worlds collide, and we'll be holding on to the morning dawn, darling. We together, holding on. Tell me what you want, darling. We together, you and me. It is me, your host, Ralph KK. Today I have an invitation for you. I would like to invite you to contribute to the podcast. There are, of course, many ways in which you can contribute, but particularly today, I would like to invite you to get a subscription, a $1 per month subscription. If you go over there to my Patreon, I have a monthly subscription of $1 per month. Today it is the year 2022. Today, what can you buy with $1? Probably you cannot even buy a hamburger. I mean, not even the cheap hamburgers you find in the fast food chains. I mean, with $1 you cannot even buy a cup of coffee, I don't know. Maybe with $1 you can buy one donut. Maybe. So you might ask yourself the question, what can my $1 per month do for you for the podcast? Okay, here is the kicker. This podcast is listened by tens of thousands of people. So, as I like to say, alone as one you are none, one together is all. Well, as I mentioned, this podcast is listened by tens of thousands of people. So if each one of you gets a $1 subscription, that is going to be a lot of money. One person standing inside the river will just get pulled by the stream. But a group of thousands of people standing in the river will not even move 1 inch. This is the power of group thinking. Anyhow, you like the podcast, support the podcast. Get your $1 subscription and be happy. So there's Patreon or buy me a coffee or even cryptocurrency. It's all up to you. So let's get going with the podcast today. You guys remember what we were talking about last time? We talk about permaculture, self-sufficiency, land snails, how to grow your giant land snails, and so on. We will get to that, to this fun topic of growing your snails. But meanwhile, have you ever heard this phrase? This very famous phrase on the internet. You will own nothing and be happy. Quotation marks. The Great Reset. So it is no secret, and apparently all of this information has been out there for more than 10 years, even up to 20 years, even more. The WEF, the World Economic Forum, they are pushing for this agenda of carbon credits. I mean, saving the environment and so on. So they have this great agenda of the Great Reset. And in the past, they talked about it like publicly. They even posted their documents online. I mean, everything was very open until today, when everything is happening already. So these documents, they are no longer on the official website. You can still find these documents on the internet. I mean, like all around the internet. So basically, they call this agenda the 2032 agenda. And it is the great plan to deindustralize and decarbonize the first world, the modern first world. So their plan is to greatly reduce consumption of fossil fuels and basically anything that produces CO2 and pollutes the environment. And they have this plan of the great 10 years of struggle. And according to them, by the year 2032, we will be living in an utopia where there are no longer fossil fuels being used or consumed, and everything is green energy, and we live in megapolises with skyscrapers and there's like flying cars or whatever. According to them, this is their utopia of the WEF. And according to their roadmap of these documents which they published, and they were online for several years. According to this roadmap, we are at the beginning of it, or it started in the year 2020. And check this out, according to this roadmap, the most difficult years is going to be 2023 and 2024, when things are gonna get real. And the SHTF is going full swing mode completely. So we have these governments of the world, these politicians, the elite, the billionaires, all of them, they're together in this plan to deindustrialize, to decarbonize societies. And if you have noticed, there is like this great big push to implement or to force upon society this idea of carbon credits. So according to them, like each person, they're gonna have like a carbon score. So this will measure how much carbon you consume per year, and you will have like an allowance per person per year, depending on what you do, what kind of lifestyle you have, and if you contribute to reduce this or to create more CO2. So this will affect your carbon score per year. And so far, it looks like the testing ground for all of this has been Australia. So you could see a lot of these crazy policies like already going full swing mode in Australia. Anyways, the main idea here, or the main question here, is that so the main question here is all this carbon credits idea, is this necessary, or there is some kind of nefarious plan behind this? Today I was watching on YouTube an interview. It is like this very famous scientist which has been blacklisted everywhere. He has been like kicked out from everywhere, and you cannot even mention his name because then you will get blacklisted or whatever. So this guy, he's a researcher, and according to him, the environment is collapsing, and we have at most 10 years left of civilization existing as we know it, because the environment is collapsing. So this means that we will not be able to create food enough to feed the whole world. If we cannot produce food because of we have a bad weather, bad environment, so then there is going to be a lot of hungry people, and then we'll see the, you could say, collapse of countries, collapse of societies, because so people will start rioting. Anyways, according to this scientist, he's very famous, but you cannot mention his name because they will blacklist you. So according to this guy, we have crossed the point of no return. So we can expect at least, at most, 10 years left of the world as we know it today. And according to him, like environmentalists and the governments, the politicians, the little whatever, they all know about this, and they know that the clock is ticking, and they know that life as we know it today, it is going to collapse. But although he's like a very famous voice in this topic, even before he came out with the data, there were other people saying like the same thing or similar things, but they put like a more modest timeline. They put a more modest timeline, so they put the complete collapse of civilization in a longer timeline, up to, let's say, the year 2050, 2070. So we have still 40 years left of the world as we know it. This the modest timeline, and also the modest idea that we can still fix the environment. So according to this guy, to this one scientist, there is no turning back. We already crossed the line of no return, and we have 10 years left of something somewhat stable before the environment collapses and you cannot grow food. And according to him, the governments, they know this, the elite, the politicians, all the rich people, they know it. And this could be a reason why most of the world governments, they are together in this 2030 agenda of the Great Reset, whatever, because they know what's coming. And what they are trying to do is to either slow down or to, here's the kicker, as they know that the world as we know it today is going to collapse, they want to create the collapse in the snap of a finger. So we have two options. Either they want just to collapse everything in one big hit, or they are trying to accelerate the changes in society to prolong the world as we know it today. So instead of 10 years, we have 20 years or 30 years. And the very funny thing is that if you see at what is happening today in Europe and in the USA, it makes you like really wonder like what is happening. Like all these policies, which are like all these policies created by the EU governments and politicians, they just are out of reasonable logic. They are counterproductive, and instead of helping the situation, they make things worse. And we are reaching like a tipping point where governments or countries or economies in Europe will collapse like pretty soon, because they literally have no gas, no oil to continue the level of industrialization which they currently have. So check this out, guys. In Europe we have several politicians which are creating policies that go against the will of the people, against the wishes of the general population. Like in Germany we have this politician called Annalena Baerbock, and she publicly came out and said that then Germany must continue with the sanctions. Mainly what is currently destroying Europe is the sanctions on energy, so like oil, gas, even coal. They cannot even buy coal from Russia because of these dumb sanctions. Yeah. Okay, so this politician called Annalena Baerbock, she came out and said that it doesn't matter what the German population says or wants. It doesn't matter what the people that voted for her want. And she doesn't care about what the general population of Germany had to say about the sanctions, because it is her choice to continue with these sanctions, regardless of the high inflation, the high prices in energy, like oil, gas, and coal. Yeah, regardless if this winter you're going to be cold and maybe dying a frozen death in your apartment, it doesn't matter what the German people say, because according to her, these destructive policies, they must continue. And this mood, this general disconnect between the politicians and the people, it is becoming so wide, like a huge gap that is turning into complete opposites, what the politicians want and what the people want. In general, the whole political system of the EU they are creating these very destructive policies. Destructive policies because these policies are destructing the Eurozone economy. It is creating deindustrialization, or as the WF calls this, decarbonization. The latest magic trick that they are trying to pull out of a hat in Germany is that they want to put a price cap on Russian oil. So this means that they want that Europe, the USA, and NATO countries to limit the price of how much Russian oil is going to be bought in the open market. And I mean, any smart economist could tell them that this will not work and it will actually do the opposite. Instead of reducing the price of energy worldwide, this will actually have the opposite effect. The price of oil in general is going to maybe double. If it gets really bad, it's going to triple. I mean, gas for sure in Europe is going to triple in winter. I'll tell you an example that I like to always say or discuss with my friends or group of people. Like, let's say you live in a neighborhood, yeah? You have many people living in the neighborhood, and you like to barter trade between your neighbors, yeah? So then I have like a neighbor a couple houses down the road, and I like to buy potatoes from him, yeah? So it is me, I go and I go and buy potatoes from my neighbor, like a couple houses down the road, yeah? Okay, so then for some reason I argue with my neighbor and I start fighting with my neighbor for some whatever reason, yeah? And then I go behind the back of my neighbor and start spreading gossip with the other people in the neighborhood. And then this neighbor, he gets like a bad reputation, and then the other people in the neighborhood, they stop buying potatoes from him, yeah? Okay, so then it turns out that a couple days later, this neighbor who was selling me potatoes, he finds out that it was me who created the rumor about him. And because of this, his business is like very bad and nobody's buying potatoes from him, yeah? So what do you think is going to happen after this? I mean, I started the rumor about my neighbor and then nobody wants to buy potatoes from him anymore. And it was me who created this, yeah? So then I go over to his house and I'm like, hey, yo, neighbor, what's up? I want some potatoes today. Can you sell me like 2 or 3 kilograms today? Tell me, what do you think is going to happen? What is the reaction of my neighbor? Is he going to sell me potatoes? Is he going to be angry, or what's going to happen? And the funny thing here is that, check this out. I am like a potato eater. Like most of my calories, they come from potatoes. So I greatly depend on my neighbor to sell me potatoes. If I don't get my potatoes, I cannot eat. Because most of my calories, they come from potatoes, yeah? So I go to my neighbor and I ask him to sell me 5 kilograms of potatoes. And then he says no, because he's angry. He says, no, I'm not going to sell you any potatoes. And then I start acting like all surprised, like, but how could you do this to me? You know, I buy potatoes from you. I depend on you for the potatoes. I mean, what am I going to do now? So then basically now, after I spread all these rumors, then my neighbor, he will not sell me potatoes, and then I'm in a bad position because I got all my calories from these potatoes that I eat that I used to get from my neighbor. So this is the same situation in Europe. they Europe used to get all the energy from Russia, gas, oil, coal, everything from them. Then they start putting sanctions on Russia, and then what did they expect it was going to happen? I mean, after all of this, did they expect Russia to continue selling them gas and oil and coal? I mean, this was pretty obvious, pretty predictable what was going to happen. And the worst thing is that Europe was not prepared at all to replace Russian energy. They had zero alternatives. And the most ridiculous thing is that probably they knew that to replace these sources of energy from Russia, it would take them 5 to 10 years to replace them. I mean, this affects how long it is going to take to replace these sources of energy. So the question is, did they know about this, or they were just stupid enough to not think about it? I mean, people in general cannot be so stupid not to consider what was going to happen. I mean, if you're going to go on a rampage against your neighbor, you should be prepared for the consequences. You should be prepared to for the storm that's coming for you. So if I was going to start a fight with my neighbor, I should have like a replacement for my potatoes. Either I would already have packed like 100 kilograms of rice, or I would have found already like another neighbor to sell me potatoes. So this is what Europe should have done 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And now, because of this, there is going to be several winters of crisis. So at least 10 years. And as we say here, the Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, the new beginning of a decarbonized Europe and decarbonized West. So again, check this out. The question here is why the EU continues with these counterproductive policies, because everything they do, it actually has the opposite effect to improve the situation. And it looks like as if they're trying like really hard to deindustrialize Europe, deindustrialize the Western world. I mean, it looks as if they are trying really hard on purpose to do this. Then the question is why? Why are they doing this? If you notice, or if you have heard about what has been happening in the Netherlands for the last month, 2 months, the government came out like really hard, and they are trying to take away the land from the farmers. So they are trying to state laws to take away the farms, the land from the farmers, so they cannot grow food anymore. Again, this is counterproductive. Why are they doing this in a time when the whole world needs food, when the whole of Europe needs food, needs energy? Why do they do something which is counterproductive? And here's an interesting fact for you. The Netherlands, up to last year, it was the number one exporter of food worldwide, according to statistics. So according to statistics, the Netherlands was or is still the number one exporter of food to the whole world. So then the government comes out and they try really hard to reverse this. They take away the land of the farmers and they try to reverse this. Why? Why are they directly attacking the food supply? Well, you see, in difficult times, it is not good for the government to have people who have access to to cheap food, to cheap energy, to cheap things. You want the population to depend on you. So in case you need to give them some orders, they will agree to this. So you want to create dependence. If you have cheap food, cheap energy, cheap oil, cheap stuff, if everything cheap, the population has options and then they don't have to listen to you. But if you create dependence, if you create a situation where food is very expensive, where energy is expensive, where stuff is very expensive, then the population is in a really bad position and then they depend on the government. I mean, if you look at history, if you look at the past, most authoritarian governments, they like to keep a population dependent on them and very well controlled. They don't like freedom. So you could say that the West is moving towards something more authoritarian, which is not what it used to be before. And then check this out, my own personal opinion about what's happening, what is going to happen, is that we are moving towards some dystopia. The West, NATO, the Western countries, they are moving towards some dystopia. My favorite example would be, if you have ever watched the film The Hunger Games, or if you read the book The Handmaidens Tale, or you watched the TV series of The Handmaidens Tale, in these two universes there is the world, and it is a technologically advanced world. And what happened there is that the USA or Western governments, they became authoritarian regimes where, I mean, like very advanced technology, it exists, but it only exists for the very wealthy and for the people in power. This means politicians, government officials, the billionaires, and the friends of the people in power. So this technology and this high quality of life, it only exists for these people. And this is the 1% or maybe 5% of the population, and then everybody else, the rest of the population, they live like peasants, like a peasant existence. Peasants which live to serve the people in power. And so if you watch these films, these TV series, these universes, the people, they live like, I mean, the peasants, the civilians, the general population, they live like farmers, or like a very simple lives. And the only thing they do is to create, to work, to farm, or to produce stuff for the ruling class. And this is two universes in a future dystopia, or maybe a present dystopia, what is happening right now. So what if the West is moving towards something like this? That the people in power, they are secretly creating some kind of Western world that keeps the 1% living a comfortable life, while the rest of the people, the 99%, they live like peasants, a simple life of servitude to the ruling class. I mean, if you see what's happening today, right now, this is what it looks like. Countries, I mean Europe at least, it is deindustrializing. The average people, it is the people that are going to suffer. And those people in power, the politicians, they will not feel it. Because they have a bunch of money, they can still pay for the high energy bills, for the very expensive food, they can just pay for everything because they have the money and they have the power. But the rest of the people, the peasants, those are the ones that are going to suffer. So if you have not watched this film, The Hunger Games, I highly recommend you to watch it. It is a mirror, a reflection of what the world is turning into. I mean, maybe not in such an extreme way where there is Hunger Games, but this future dystopia of how modern feudalism has been implemented. We live in in the film, people live in a super high-tech modern world where the ruling class, they enjoy all the privileges of a very advanced society, while the peasants, they live like peasants. They live in wooden houses. They eat porridge for breakfast. They have they don't even have healthcare. If you get sick, you might just die of a cold or something. I don't know. Sounds pretty horrific, but I mean, we could be going to something like this. Even in this film, I mean, The Hunger Games, the ruling class, they have a abundance of food, abundance of energy, high-tech toys. Even they have they even have life and health enhancing medicines to live longer. All while the peasants, they live pretty dull, boring, painful lives, and they die at 30 or something, I don't know. There is this term talked about on the internet of modern feudalism, which might actually be true of what people, what the governments in the West, they want to do. If you've ever heard about the Great Reset, their catchphrase is, "You will own nothing and be happy." And according to the documents that they published the past 10-20 years, so the idea is by the 2030, usual citizens in Europe, they will live some kind of nomadic lifestyle where they own nothing. They just go around in, let's say, government-owned places, facilities, houses, apartments, jobs. So they live like nomads according to these documents. So people, they go, they check into an apartment owned by the government. They stay there, they can sleep, they can eat food for free according to what's in your quota of carbon credits or whatever. So you can eat, you can sleep, you can, I don't know, use the appliances, play video games, listen to music, whatever. Go go work in a part-time job implemented or given to you by the government. And as the catchphrase says, you owe nothing, but you are happy. So you live a nomadic lifestyle in cities where you go from place to place doing whatever you want. You live a meager existence. I don't know. I mean, you should really check out all the stuff on the internet about this topic. And the documents, even though they were deleted from the website, I mean the PDFs, you can find them online. And there is a big accurate description of what these people they want to do by 2030. So Agenda 2030. Also, you should check out this book or TV series called The Handmaidens Tale. The author is Margaret Atwood, if I'm not mistaken, Margaret Atwood. So you should check it out. It is also something similar, like so according to what's in the story in this world. So there was some kind of revolution in the USA, and then some extremist ultra-Catholic group took power. And then they have an authoritarian government where also the 1% they live a very comfortable life with all the privileges and comfort of high technology, a high technological life, of a high technological life. While the peasants, they live a meager life and they just live to serve those in power. And one of the main story drivers in this world of the Handmaidens tale is that there is some kind of a disease or something that makes women not being able to get pregnant anymore. So there is a few women who still can have children, but there is a very small minority of women who can have children. And therefore this drives the whole society to find these women who can still have children. But anyway, you should check out these two stories and have a glimpse into what the future might hold for you. Also, another cool film to watch is The Road. So this film, The Road, it's a very post-apocalyptic glimpse into the future. In this universe of The Road, there is just no civilization at all. Everything collapsed, and people, they just wander around trying to survive, and it's just complete chaos and anarchy. So let's say this is going to be your homework for today, to have a glimpse into the future so that you might be better prepared to survive the apocalypse. This of course includes how to grow your own giant land snails from Africa. So I'll probably do another podcast, another segment with something like 10-15 minutes of podcast of how to grow your snails. It's not difficult, it's kind of easy, let's say. And snails, they are a very good source of protein. So don't forget, if you're interested, support the podcast, get your $1 subscription, or just make a one-time donation with this website, Buy Me a Coffee. So the link's in the description. Contribute if you like the podcast, and I'll see you next time. And don't forget, I will be here with you during the apocalypse and after the apocalypse.
always smiling, and I love a good mood. Confussing laws, muñeca dolls. Let's drop it all and just draw straws. What about a black sheep in a human herd? What about ribbons and bluebirds? What about innocence in the eye? Makes me start to cry. I'm not a Frenchman, I'm not a maniac. I'm simply the epitome of a romantic. Conical bras, muñeca dolls, Pinocchio, Barbie, and Ken should be locked in the Plug in the extension cord. Give me some power. Connect me with the world outside through a gentle whisper. Electric pop candy, sugar kids come together. It's now, it's never, never. It's a carnival ride, a 10-minute night groove. It's a new song and dance, the other side of the fence. It's a 56-mile finish line you can't get to. It's weird science, non-compliant to the rules. Another world of cool you can only be invited to. And it feels like heaven. It feels like heaven.
What you're looking for? A couple of words chained together, baby, never did no one harm. Give yourself to the universe and the stars, while the intergalactic cranks up, baby, this Neptune's so charged. Her love is pretty, the kiss was lovely, her touch was mighty, mighty. Neptune's so charged. The sex was dirty, the looks were funny, her words were mighty funky. No kiss is mighty funky. measures. Never mind, forget about that buried space treasure. Face out, dreaming of the cosmos afar, while the intergalactic cranks up bigger this Neptune's so charge. Her love is pretty, the kiss was lovely, her touch was mighty, mighty. Neptune's so charge. The sex was dirty, the looks were funny, her words were mighty funky. Her kiss was mighty funky. With this skinny little whacker brain. Look at these words, baby. They've been diagnosed clinically insane. Headed to Mars in a broke down little car, while the intergalactic cranks up bigger this Neptune's so charged.